for the Medicare Machine Factory Top 1% podcast. We have a very awesome and special guest today. His name is Christian. You may know about him. He travels the country helping agents just like yourself be better. He has an awesome channel as far as on YouTube, putting out content all the time to help the average agent and the above average agent get to the next levels. And so we're really excited to have Christian today. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me, Josh. I'm a big fan from afar. I think this is the first. This is one of the. We might have spoken in the previously, face to face at an event sometime or something like that. But I know it's always been kind of brief. I've always been a big admirer of kind of your work and what you do and what you've been able to build. So it's a pleasure and a privilege for me to get to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So so on some respects, this will be a fun one because I don't know you as well as a lot of the other people I've had on the show before. And so it'll be fun to get to know you a little bit. So I understand you've been in the business, 6 or 7 years, something like that?
So my official date of getting into the business was in 2014.
Okay.
So I've been in a little bit over 8 years now.
Yeah.
And so my kind of background, like a lot of people, I feel like in our space, I had a parent that was in the business for about 25 years. So my dad was a Medicare agent for about 25 years before I ever got in. And so I kind of grew up around the business. And my dad was a good producer. He was number one or number two, in the state for our Blue Cross Blue Shield here in Utah Regents for probably about 10, 11 years in a row. And so he was a very good agent. He was a very good producer, and he kind of built a small little brick and mortar agency. And so when I was about 20, maybe 21 years old, somewhere in that time frame, I was able to. I got my license, and I came to work with his agency as a downline. I wasn't LOA or anything like that. So some people bring their kids in and they'll put them in as LOA. But for my dad, he just wanted to do it differently. I think he just didn't want me to have anything to do with his company. He wanted me to kind of do my own thing, which is just a different way of looking at it, but he put me as an independent. And so I kind of started building my own clientele, eventually my own company, my own business, my own agency. And then they were always built separately. And after probably about maybe 5 or 6 years, my company was larger than his. And so that's kind of how I got started. But yeah, I probably got in at about 2014 was the year. So about 8 years.
What do you think the biggest difference between then and now in our business is?
Oh man. So I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday, actually, because my wife is an agent too. And she just started working with me in the previous AEP this past year. And so she's still pretty new. She's still pretty green, but she's doing good. She can make sales and things like that. I think the thing that comes to mind is when I first got started, right, 2014, we did not have call centers like we do now. There were call centers, but like your biggest competition was like Joe Blow agent across town. That was your biggest competition. You didn't really have these monster call centers that you were competing with a lot to get to kind of retain your clients, right? I think customer retention today is more important than ever because it's easier to lose clients, I think, than when I started.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have these monster, multi-billion-dollar organizations out there and you just didn't see a lot of that. So I think that's a big change. The commissions are bonkers compared to when I got in.
Mm-hmm.
So like Medicare Advantage, I was next year, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the true ups are 601, renewals 301 for 2023. And my first year, a true up was 425 and half that on a renewal. And then 2015, they went down to 408 and half that on the renewal. So it actually went down from 1 year to the next. And then the year after that, 16, they went back up to 425, and then they've been climbing ever since. But the commissions are just huge. Like people look at Medicare and they're like, oh, there's no money in Medicare. You can't say that, really. I mean, you could never say it anyway, but you really can't say it now, because the commissions are much higher. And then I think we had a time period to where when I first got in, you had to get scopes signed 48 hours before the appointment. So that was definitely a kind of a mess on the compliance thing.
Yep.
And we saw it. We've seen it dramatically come off the gas pedals And now we're seeing it start to pick up again to where, like, I think the pendulum every couple of years, it's going to swing back and forth. So we're going to have all super compliance, and then we're going to have just very lack of compliance, right? So it's just going to swing back and forth to extremes on both sides. And I think we're starting to see it now swing back towards more on the compliance side.
Do you think that's going to keep lazy agents out of the field, or do you think that's going to, what do you think the effect of this is going to be? To me, it's business as usual. I don't really feel any. I've already recording my calls anyway.
Yeah, same.
I don't see any change at all, other than, to me, it's going to make it easier because there's going to be some people that filter out every time there's something like this that happens. Some people filter out because it's too hard or too tough or whatever. Hopefully all agents realize the opportunity that's in front of them in this AEP. But AEP is the hot topic right now. What are the things that your agency does now to make sure that October 1st and then October 15th, you're ready to rock and roll?
Yeah. I love the question. So with AEP, what we're kind of doing right now is we're putting the finishing touches on a lot of marketing campaigns, a lot of lead orders with vendors we are working with, where we don't work with vendors nearly as much as we used to. We do a lot of our own marketing now. But we really start kind of prepping for AEP. I've heard some people start prepping like, January. We don't start that early. We probably start in like April, but we around this time period, we're just kind of, we're finishing up marketing campaigns. We're just kind of making sure that all the final groundwork is laid. With us, I have several other agents in the office that, we need to make sure that they have enough lead flow to be successful. Mm-hmm. And so my strategy is far different than it used to be when it was just me. And I think you're kind of in that same boat right now, because you're working with different agents now. And so it's definitely a different mentality, because you need the proper amount of volume. And so your budget needs to kind of adhere to that. So like with us, we have a pretty good diversity of lead flow. We have a lot of different sources that we get leads from. We have, and I learned this from years ago. I remember, there was an AEP I went through that I didn't have the lead flow necessarily that I wanted. And part of the reason was I put all my marketing dollars into one type of lead. And it had done great for us for years. And then all of a sudden they didn't have the volume for us. We were getting like 2 or 3 leads a week. And I was like, oh crap. I'm like, what do I do? We're like October 20th. And we got with another vendor who, last minute took care of us, and, it's kind of saved our AEP. But that made an impression on me to where I want to have diversity, because I think the main thing about, and I'm sure you'd agree with me on this. I think the main thing that separates agents that do well, that are top performers, top producers, and ones that aren't, is the ones that are top performers figure out how to get in front of people and spend less time doing anything else, right? They spend the majority of their time getting in front of people. It's a volume game. It's a numbers game. We all can present Medicare. We all can conduct an appointment. We all can make sales if we get in front of somebody. However, not everybody can get in front of people. And I think that's a skill. That's an art. That's a skill, and that's something that really is important. So we do a lot of different types of marketing. We do branded direct mail. We do branded Facebook ads. We really have a focus of having our brand kind of stranglehold the market here. So we have billboards around town. And for me, it's about the repetition of our branding, of our name, of our agency. And they all kind of come together and help each other. And then, of course, we buy leads from vendors at times. We buy leads from Lead Heroes. Glenn and I are incredibly good friends, so we buy leads from them. Occasionally, we'll do some drops with Lead Concepts, although we're not doing that much generic direct mail anymore. So we just really try to mix it up. We do booths, we do senior expos, we have a lot of referral partners here in the market. We have about 15 financial planners that send us referrals. So it's about touching all of those sources, making sure that everything's lined up. There's nothing that we forgot about, and that when AEP comes, we're ready to rock and roll. We're not fussing with anything.
Sure. So when you say getting in front of people, what do you think the top trait of somebody who's really good at getting in front of people has?
Oh, I love that question. I think I think there's 2 different types of people, because I don't think it's necessarily one type of individual, because there's 2 that come to mind. I think there's one type of person, and they're probably more old school. And this kind of goes back to the question you asked a second ago about like, what does the new rules and regulations do, right? I think the new rules and regulations, the people that are lazy, like you said, that can't kind of adapt and adjust. I think also people that are set in their ways, they're kind of going to get edged out a little bit. I think maybe people that are older, and not everybody. I don't want to make it seem like I'm picking on any age demographic. I'm not. But I think that's the type of people you'll see kind of phase out. So to kind of direct back to your question about getting in front of people, I think there's a lot of people in our industry that are really, really good at picking up the phone, making calls, and booking appointments that they'll later go out on. When I got started in the business, that's kind of how I learned how to prospect. I would pick up the phone, and back then I was cold calling. We didn't work leads or anything like that. So I was cold calling. Anybody that's ever cold called knows that like that's grueling. I did that for years at the beginning, and I did really well with it, but it's tough. It's not for everybody. And so I think there's the type of person that can pick up the phone and book 20 appointments from Wednesday through Saturday, right? The later half of the week. They'll go out on those appointments and maybe they'll close half of them, So you have that person. You have another person that's an excellent expertise marketer. I think we have far fewer of those because I think marketing's an art form. It's like playing the guitar or anything like that. It's like there's so many little intricate details that go into it. And I think there's a lot of people that are expertise marketers, and they do a really good job of running different kind of marketing campaigns to get the proper lead flow and the highest intent lead flow pushed to you and pushed, towards them or their agency or whatever the case might be. So I think there's those two categories. I think they can both be effective. Of course, the person that's the good marketer are probably going to have an easier time putting up big numbers because they're not wasting time weeding through the uninterested people as much. They're really laser focused in on the most high intent people because their marketing caters to that.
Exactly. So for me, I find a lot of times a lot of agents out there will mistake branding for leads, and a lot of them will expect I put an ad in the paper, I put up a billboard, and nobody's knocking down my door, nobody's ringing my phone off the hook. Why? And they don't understand the long play that's involved with that, and really the perpetuity and the continuance and the persistency and consistency of those ads and the presence. Like if you just start with a billboard and then you add other stuff over time, it's that passive marketing, and that's what it's really for. Do you find the passive marketing eventually leads to active marketing, or is it more of an in concert with the other stuff that you're doing?
Oh, I definitely think it leads to long-term lead flow. I think in our business, you have short-term lead flow and long-term lead flow. I would say short-term lead flow is like you buy a batch of leads. It's like where it's a little bit more transactional, right? Like probably any agent could step into your shoes, right? And that wouldn't really matter because it's generic. It's not branded towards you. It's short-term lead flow. You can pick up the leads, you can make calls, you can make sales this week. Then you have the long-term lead flow, which is like what you're doing with Medicare Peace of Mind. It's branding over a long period of time. And this is a multi-year process for it to really become what you want it to become. But it's insanely effective because it drives business to you, right? And it takes time, right? Like the first thing that we ever did there, to kind of do long-term branding for consumers like that is the first thing I did was I self-published a book about Medicare. And then a year later, we started doing the Everything Medicare podcast, which a lot of agents might be familiar with. It's a podcast about Medicare, and it became enormously popular. We would get calls from all over the country. And that was a big reason why we got licensed in so many states, so we could write these people. But we were getting calls from all over the country from people just wanting to work with us. They were the only type of lead that I could compare to referrals. If anything, in some situations, I would say they're better than referrals. Mm-hmm. And people say there's nothing better than a referral. I would agree with that. But this might be the one thing that would be, because they're people that are educated. You've educated them by talking once for the show or for the recording. So, but for the first 6 months of doing that podcast, we didn't get one phone call. And so it's easy. A lot of people will go through that and they'll be like, well, this doesn't work. Well, no, you need to have a long-term plan for this, for your branding, for what you're doing. It will work if you keep working at it, and it will work over time, but it's long-term. So I think for me, I try to have a mixture of both short-term and long-term, because the long-term at this point, it does bring in business for us, but sometimes we need a little bit extra volume. So we need to focus on some short-term aspects. But I'm always focused first and foremost on the long-term, because I believe 2, 3, 4 years from now, that will just continue to bear fruit. Like there's people that will listen to YouTube videos I did years ago, or, a podcast I recorded years ago, and they'll call in and they'll buy a policy from us. That's long-term effect. That's years in the making.
Right. So I understand you may or may, I've heard a rumor, I'm not sure who told me, but you may or may not have a book coming out soon. Tell us about the book. What's it about?
Yes. So, and thank you for that. I do have a new book that just dropped a couple of days ago, on Amazon. It's called Superstar. So the entire title is Superstar: What Separates Top Producing Insurance Agents from the Mediocre Ones. And it's all about a celebration of excellence. It's a celebration of people like you, Josh. People like you, people like, I don't want to say me, I don't want to be big-headed or anything like that, but it's a celebration of top producers and what they do in their business and how they look at things in their business differently than everybody else that makes them top producers. Because if we've all seen certain circumstances, right, where one agent has the same type of lead flow, they're with the same FMO, the same upline. There's another agent in the same exact scenario, almost the exact same circumstance. One agent just complains, the leads suck, my FMO sucks, everybody sucks. And then there's the agent that's maybe in the cubicle next to them, or whatever the case might be, and they crush it. Same exact circumstances. And this other agent's like, oh, well, agent B is so lucky. They just trip into things. Everything just seems to go well for them. It's like, no, not necessarily. They're doing something different than you. They're doing something you're not doing. And so for me, the book is all about what top producers do that other people don't, and how they look at things. Mm-hmm. And how hard they work, right? Like people like you, Josh, people like me, we work really freaking hard. And that's something that gets lost. It's something people don't want to talk about. People want to think about, laptop lifestyle. I want to sit on the beach and collect renewals. That's nice. That sounds good in theory and everything. It sounds like something a recruiter told you to get you into the business. But if you want to be massively successful in this business, you got to work. You got to work hard. Now, someone's going to be watching this and they're going to say, well, you got to work smart too. Well, duh, absolutely. Right. Like, of course you want to work smart as well, but you can't cheat that hustle. And so the book talks about what it takes to be a top producer from a mental standpoint to an action standpoint to a strategy standpoint. It's just a celebration of those characteristics.
That's awesome. Where can people, you said Amazon, right?
Yes. Yeah. The best place would be on Amazon. So if you just go on Amazon and type in my name, Christian Brindle, it's a nice blue cover, or you can type in Christian Brindle Superstar. It should pop right up. It's a very personal book for me because it's something that I really enjoy always thinking about. Like what can I do to give myself an edge over others? Not that it's like direct competition, but it's just more so like, what can we do to be better? I think everybody's competition is more themselves, but yeah, it's my favorite book that I've ever put out. I think people will really enjoy it. So yeah, the best place to find it is over on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. I look forward to doing more with you in the near future. He's Christian Brindle. He's a magician in a lot of sorts. You see him on stages all over the place. He has the six-figure agent summit that he did this year. It was the one thing I couldn't go to this year. I'm definitely gonna go next year. But yeah, get your tickets now. Get his book. Subscribe to our channels. I don't know if you're in this business. I don't know what you're doing if you're not following content that's free from people that are at the top of the game. But yeah, thanks again for your time, Christian, and I look forward to next time.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you having me, and keep up the great work. You're doing amazing.